Planning and Sustainability Commission meeting. On the agenda today, we will have items of interest from commissioners, followed by a director's report, then the consent agenda, and then we will have our sixth work session for the Central City 2035 plan. So, any items of interest? Everybody just wants to get rolling. Mike?
Yeah, I've already mentioned this in the past, but I just got off the Skyping about an hour and a half ago regarding the April 26th gathering here that I've mentioned before. And it's shaping up to be a pretty incredible lineup of international folks working on greening of cities, including all the issues we talk about here: equity, inclusion, climate change, adaptation, urban design, et cetera, et cetera. So again, just check out your calendar, do a calendar save. We're going to be sending out details by early next week. Got 25 people coming from around the world.
Did you, just for our broad audience's sake, announce what that actually was?
Yes, there's a project, national project, international project actually, the Nature of Cities, that I'm on the board of, and David Maddox, the director, wanted to put together an international symposium on the nature of cities, the nature in cities, and I said, well, you cannot possibly contemplate doing that without doing it in Portland. And so the planning meeting will be in Portland. The other angle on it is I've been talking with Steve Whitney at Bullitt Foundation, who's put in the money to pay for the folks to come over, because as many of you may know, Bullitt Foundation is focused, in fact, they just recently contracted their geography to focus on Vancouver, Seattle, and Portland, the Emerald Corridor. And their work is focused primarily on urban ecology, climate change, and so forth. And so it's going to be pretty cool. It'll actually be 2 days of planning, Tuesday and Thursday, with local people as well as the 25 international folks planning the 2018 symposium, which my agenda is that it be here. Remains to be seen where it'll be on the world. And so having all of those experts in town, it didn't make sense not to take advantage of their being here, and so we're putting on a full-day summit on the 26th.
Great. Thanks for describing that.
Yeah.
Any other items? Jeff?
I had a housekeeping question, Susan, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but unless I missed it, there was going to be a memo for us sort of outlining the changes the city council made to the implementation package they adopted in December between what we forwarded to them. So is that still on your busy work list? Okay. Just wanted to be sure I didn't miss it. Thank you.
Any other items? No? Susan, director's report?
Just one item. In July, we are going to host, along the same lines as Mike, the C40, which is started out being the 40 largest cities in the world working on climate action together on as sort of a network. It's grown to a larger group. Portland's been a part of it as sort of the younger sister or something of the larger cities, and working in concert with them, providing sort of technical expertise of the ways and the things that we've learned about over the years. And so it's going to focus on transit-oriented development, and it'll be not a huge conference, but it'll be significant cities from around the world. So as that comes forward, I'll let y'all know about it, and maybe a couple of you might want to be involved.
Great. Any other items? Consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have consideration of the minutes from February 14th. A motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I forgot to say it. And opposed? Okay, that's been accepted. And here we go, Sally. Central City 2035. This is our sixth work session. Our agendas seem to have gotten a little shorter, so we might get through it in decent time today. Might.
Thank you very much. Yes, it's our sixth work session, and we have three main agenda items for you today. We have a couple of actions that we'll get to first, and Troy will present those to you. And then we will talk about one particular project in the TSP, and Mauricio Leclerc will be here to talk to you about that. And then we have a carryover item from last meeting related to surface parking lots. So that's what we have for you today. And Troy.
Hello, Troy Doss, Senior Planner, Central City Team. I don't have a lot, but I just wanted to walk you through two actions that we're amending, basically, that are in the packet today. The first is a request from Urban Forestry regarding Old Town Chinatown, and more specifically, the White Stag sign that's at the Burnside Bridge, the Portland sign. There has been a request that we modify the language to talk about evaluating options to preserving public views of the White Stag sign from the Burnside Bridge and the East Bank Esplanade. There's a concern that at some point, trees and vegetation that's in the park could obscure the view of that, and that could become an issue. So this is just trying to clarify that a little bit about what the intent would be. And then the second was based on a conversation we had here, where we had an action that was really talking about working with Portland Public Schools about a pre-K through 12th grade facility somewhere in the central city. We had been very specific about language at it being at Lincoln, and the reality is that it could be really a number of places in the central city, and we didn't want to limit it to that one location. So that's, yes.
So on the first one, does that mean cut down all the trees or make the sign taller?
It could be, I think they're evaluating options is what they would say,
Okay.
yes.
It could also mean slightly moving the viewpoint.
Any other questions? I might have one. And I think I noticed that it says support PPS, and we had talked about in our last work session, do you broaden that to other entities that might be doing work to bring elementary schools or middle schools into downtown? So did you look at that or consider that?
Well, we looked back at how we did that during the North Pearl, where this came up for the first time. And going back over that conversation, it was, there's nothing that preclude us from doing that from a policy basis, but that making it a specific policy basis that we wanted to lean more towards public because of the more inclusive nature of a public school, as opposed to being on the hook to have to work with any private entity that might come along who wants to also provide public school facilities. And there was some sensitivity at the time too from Portland Public Schools, as you might imagine, about watering down the attention towards their types of facilities for more of schools of a private nature. Not saying that there aren't nonprofits who could provide a great benefit to the district, and maybe even charter schools to some extent, but at the time, the conversation with the Planning Commission then and City Council was really more focused on calling out the public schools rather than other facilities. Doesn't mean we can't change that. I'm just saying that was the basis for that.
I guess that makes a ton of sense, but I also think there are potentially, and especially if the public schools aren't going to serve that need, the opportunity for a private school, and if you were to, I don't know if you could limit it or if it makes sense, but especially if they're going to do it in a way that was inclusive versus exclusive and maybe wasn't tuition dependent or something to that effect. But if they're would be able to come in and serve a need.
Well, again, we don't believe there's anything that's absent from the policy framework that would exclude us from doing that today. And the challenge
maybe the hang up for me is the fact that it just says support PPS. It doesn't say support anybody else. And so would that lead one to believe, therefore, that you shouldn't support anybody else, you should only support PPS?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm totally open to other people's thoughts on it, just curious.
Well, I don't read it as excluding anybody else. I think it's an important policy statement to say we're going to support public education.
Okay.
I think that's a worthy statement to make, personally.
Since you've got us thinking about it, perhaps a more active word than support should be there, so something like coordinate. What I'm thinking is the planning staff, the planning structure here, maybe should be more active with the schools, saying, hey, we've got X number of new units coming online in a certain area, have you looked at school sites, what are you doing, and sort of, rather than less actively support what they do, maybe more proactively encourage them to be looking for facilities, ideas, sites, and I don't know, a more active word than support is just a thought, if there's interest in thinking about what that word might be.
Yeah, I think the reason we use support in this case is it was appropriate when we were talking about our efforts with Lincoln High School specifically.
Right.
We do have comp plan policy language that does discuss coordination with BPS and other public schools throughout the region in that regard. So we could fine tune this a little bit further. That's fine.
Katie?
Or we could do it right now if you want to. We can just change that word. So.
Oh, I just thought I'd stir the pot a little bit. I don't think it's a
Yeah.
big issue either way, quite frankly, but.
Yeah, I like the language that you have in here. I was on a public school board in Park Rose, and anything that we can do to support the public schools, I think that for-profit should be, I'm not against you helping them, but I don't want it enshrined in public language.
Go ahead, Eli.
Well, if you were going to try and do some middle round option, it could be support schools, K-8 schools downtown, particularly Portland Public School, something like that.
Obviously, I'm supportive of it, but it doesn't mean that I'm not feeling like this is anything else. Anyway, I'm not feeling like this is an item other people feel strongly about, so.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Troy.
While we're waiting, I'll just mention, and I'm not bringing this to the commission to discuss at all, but I was contacted by the Japanese Gardens regarding their view issue, and actually went up and got together with Sadafumi Uchiyama, who's the curator. And it was interesting to actually walk the site with him and look at what those view issues were. So I just wanted to let you know that I did that. I may talk with staff with regard to what I learned during that field trip.
How does this work? Am I doing something? I don't know. Sorry, I'll introduce myself. Good afternoon, Mauricio Leclerc, Bureau of PBOT, Planning and Office of Transportation. So, and we know Joe.
Joe Zender with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability.
There you go. Sorry about that. So we're here to discuss the amendment by Commissioner Smith that is in your packet. I lost the packet. Anyway, you know where it is. I'll summarize it here. Let's see. So, thank you. Sorry. So J3, TSP major projects. Commissioner Smith has introduced an amendment to remove 3 projects from the RTP, from the TSP. Sorry, the Transportation System Plan. I'll go into that in a second. Here's an outline of what we're going to be discussing. So what are we talking about? What projects are we discussing? A little bit of the process. We had a lot of process on this that ended up with this project. History of the ideas and the big ideas themselves. This is a innovative project that really makes a freeway project be something that is a placemaking and improves conditions for all modes. And the recommendations in a little bit more detail as to what they are, some early actions that we've been doing since we adopted the Northeast Quadrant Plan and some amendment implications. You know, what happens, what are the implications of Commissioner Smith's proposal? So, here we have Bureau Planning to assist on the other side of the coin, the placemaking element that we were able to introduce into the project. So Again, those are the TSP projects in the TSP. They relate to, construction, and engineering, and a local component of the project. But basically, they are a bundle that represent the Broadway Wilder Interchange project. So this all started in a long time ago, 2010, and ended up in 2012. I was young, and I had a future back then. But after 19 SAC meetings and 85 community meetings, and this is how I look now. And anyway, we went through a very thorough process with a very, very large and very diverse stakeholder advisory committee. We met 19 times. We talked about land use, transportation, freeway, and everything together. We have subcommittees. We have open houses, charrettes. We had large open houses, very well attended. It was a very thorough process. And then, if you recall, some of those who were here at the PSC, we went through the adoption process of the North-Northeast Quadrant. It was supported by this body unanimously, with the exception of Commissioner Smith, right? And that went to City Council in October of 2012, and it was adopted unanimously as well. So what is it that we try to do? We try to do improve a significant bottleneck and local surface problem, as well as do an area plan. That we know we haven't heard that being done anywhere, at least at the time we undertook this effort. Basically, I-5 in the vicinity of the Rose, well, it was the Rose Quarter, now it's the Motor Center. You can see it there. It funnels traffic from I-5 from the north and the south. US 30 from industrial area northwest into, say, Lower Albina or to other areas. I-405 as part of the freeway loop, and I-84 comes from the east. So it is very important interchange of regional significance. On top of it, you have the Lloyd District, the Motor Center, and access to Lower Albina and northeast neighborhoods. This happens at the same time that the design, instead of widening the lanes, which usually happens in freeway design, everything gets narrowed to 2 lanes underneath the Broadway Wilder bridges without any shoulder. So there's quite a potential, and actually happens quite a bit, delay and congestion for many hours of the day, and when there's a crash, for many hours. So we went ahead to try to resolve that, and as a opportunity, see if we can fix the local system that is also very complex. Also, as part of the project, we spent a lot of time dealing with history. That's the area in 1950, and that's the transformation that happened as a result of major projects. Emmanuel Hospital, the Convention Center, the Memorial Coliseum, and the mall, for example. So, yeah, I know it would have been great if. Anyway, I'm digressing. So we spent a lot of time. We did an inventory of the land over there, and we paid attention to the history, the African American history, the impacts, and we try. And here's the construction of Minnesota Freeway in 1962. So we paid close attention, and that informed our approach to this project. Make sure that we did something that would benefit the local system, and try to lessen the gap, the bridge that is created by this project. So at the same time, try to find something better than this. This is the project that was there before. We replaced it with the outcome of the Northeast Quadrant Plan. As you can see, that is something that is big, expensive, and does nothing to the local system. So that's something that we replaced. It was in the RTP, now it's been replaced by what you're gonna see in a minute. So that's for context. The project needs, this area has the highest freeway crash rates in the state, 3 times more than the Terwilliger curves, according to all that. Short weaving sections, if you've driven it, you know that you have to begin to move, otherwise you end up in a place you don't want. The interface with the local system is very complex. There are many ways in which we can improve bike safety and mobility and increase pedestrian connectivity. This photo addresses what we called during the project phase the box. Everything goes through the box. The pets, the bikes, the streetcar, the transit, and it's very complicated. So one of the big ideas that was to try to find ways around the box. So we created something like a box outside the box. Basically, increase the connectivity in the local network so that we will lessen the impact of this area. What streets are? The box are Broadway Wilder east-west, and Vancouver Williams north-south, and that's the southbound off-ramp. Sorry, I think. And a side note, this area is number 36 on the Federal Highway Administration list of top freeway bottlenecks for freight. So it's also, from a safety perspective, a local system, something we talked a lot about, the bicycle and pedestrian improvements that this project could bring about. This is a map, an updated map of what we had back in the day. This is from the Vision Zero interactive map that we have at PBOT. There's a lot of collisions in this corridor. And as a result, Vision Zero identifies Broadway through this area, and actually the whole corridor, as one of the high crash corridors, part of our high crash network. So we think that this project would address a lot of the issues and conflicts that happen there. So in a nutshell, this is the project. I'll break it up into pieces, from about Russell to about I-84. It has an auxiliary lane. That's a lane that doesn't continue past this point, roughly. You usually see it with a dash line, meaning that it's going to end. It allows cars to move around, more wiggle room, as well as the shoulder for safety. So you can kind of see them in comparison. Look what happens as a local system. I don't know if I have a pointer. Maybe I do. But imagine coming from Williamson, what happens here. I don't even understand that, actually. But as a result, we have in this proposal lids and greater connectivity. We have another east-west street, as well as a pedestrian bicycle bridge on either side of the box. This is the box. You're looking. This is east is north in this way. So the lids, the enhanced mobility, that's all benefits to the project, as well as we avoided any major impacts on historic structures. And we looked at over 70 options before we landed at this. So we work very closely with all that in the community on this. So the benefits from the mainline perspective, I know this is important for freight and for regional mobility, a roughly 50% reduction in crashes. This is based on technical analysis, engineering, based on simulations that ODOT has conducted. Less congestion and delay as a result of the fewer crashes. There's a recurring congestion and non-recurrent. This would address the non-recurrent. What happens, an accident suddenly shuts down the whole thing. It would greatly impact the ability to traffic to continue to flow. As a result, there's a less significant improvement to travel times at peak, and it provides more reliability for freight, particularly during the midday, which they avoid the peak to make deliveries. And the shoulders allow disabled vehicles to get out of the way, and as well as the emergency vehicles to access the site as quickly as possible and attend anybody who may be hurt or get the vehicle out of the way. So that's the improvements on the main line. On the local system, there are 5 bridges that get replaced. They're all tied together, and they are tied to the project, so you cannot do the main line without doing the surface improvement. So we will have a new bicycle pedestrian facility, whatever is up to our latest standards, seismic upgrades of all the affected bridges, additional bicycle and pedestrian routes. I'll show you a picture in a minute. More connectivity, which is we did the analysis with planning, and we'll talk about it in a little bit, and better local street connections, as well as urban design opportunities. And I think we can talk a little bit about that.
Great, thanks, Mauricio. So this project was part of Central City 2035 quadrant plan. And it was at the same time a ODOT facilities plan, as Mauricio has explained. And we took advantage of the fact that we're thinking about sort of the long-range development and community objectives for that part of the central city. At the same time, the highway engineers need to figure out a safety and congestion improvement. And what resulted was something that really offers significant benefits to the principles that we had in the southeast or in the northeast quadrant plan about connectivity, about getting new development closer, getting underdeveloped parts of that corridor be more successful for development sites, about improving pedestrian and bike connectivity, access to the river, and addressing the barrier that the I-5 represents. Because physically, it's a freeway in a trench with bridges crossing it, these viaducts that cross it, that have some level of pedestrian safety and quality, but are really, at the end of the day, even with those crossings, a barrier. So the principle that's reflected here, one of the big breakthroughs was in working with ODOT on the project, their engineers discovered that that capping over Broadway and Weidler with a single sort of wide viaduct was as cost-effective as just replacing each of those individual bridges, because every time a road crosses the trench, the I-5, it really amounts to the construction of a whole separate bridge. But if you engineer it in such a way you can create what ultimately is a big wide bridge or a cap, and that had cost-competitive aspects to it, so it wasn't ruled out on its face. Opens up flexibility because this intersection needs to be rebuilt and keep a streetcar operational because the streetcar crosses at Broadway and Weidler. Opens up the ability to relocate the ramps on and off of the freeway so it works with these accessory lanes that Mauricio was describing. And to do this in a way that adds two important sort of bridges connections that we think can facilitate, synergize redevelopment of land along the Broadway corridor there for future redevelopment. One is an extension of a new crossing that goes from Vancouver to Dixon. Mauricio, you want to point that out? So show Vancouver. There's Williams, there's Vancouver. This adds a crossing there where there is no connection today. And what's intriguing about that is it allows you to get down to the river, get down farther Broadway without going through the box. Remember how we're saying avoid the box? And it creates an address and an access way for the Blanchard Building, which is a major redevelopment site if and when the Portland Public School headquarters gets relocated. And it's a site in your quadrant plan you recommended taking to EX zoning. Like this is a mixed use and development site that we think when it happens can be transformative to that whole sort of node there that's already served by streetcar, that's already served by bus and is walking distance to downtown, to the west side. So that's the prospects, and I think what was most attractive about the whole project for us was not so much what happens down on the freeway level. Of course, they had safety and congestion improvements to that, but it's the possibilities that it opens up on the top side and how consistent those were with a variety access of the quadrant plan.
Thank you, and I would not have, PIBA would not have the resources to do that on our own here. So here's a picture of the lid. This is the primary lid. They could put, there's potentially another lid here that could be provided, again, for the convenience of many benefits, including mobility. That's where you can put stuff while you're constructing, and detours and sort of thing. I think extra things to notice is car exiting Lloyd District, they have to go from this way, this way, this way, this way, to finally get on the freeway. This way, by moving the ramp north, we're basically taking cars from like 4 or 5 blocks and from the Moda Center, so that actually, that's regional traffic that doesn't have to be there, so that's additional benefit. We've actually, by simplifying the operations here, we actually have fewer of the same cars going over more of our blocks, so that's like another benefit to the local system, in addition to the bicycle and pedestrian improvements and, trees that in other amenities that will come as part of the project. Here's a bridge at Clackamas that would connect, there's a box, a way around the box to the north, and there's another one to the south. Here's a potential look for how the lid would work on the lid over Broadway, under Broadway and Weidler. So this was brought to you in 2012 to this body. And to City Council. It was adopted in October of 2012. And as part of the resolution, the City Council recommended that the Oregon Transportation Commission in Salem adopt a facility plan. So the quadrant plan has this, and inside it has a facility plan. That is the ODOT language that they need. And then directed us the city and ODOT to work together on three things, seek funding, continue the environmental study and so forth, implement some near-term safety improvements that we find along the way. We had a lot of discussion about this, as I mentioned, and also work with us, or us work with ODOT to designate the central city as a multimodal mixed-use area, which has some benefits. I think we talked about it before, to development and density in the central city. So the near-term improvements we have completed. One was a right hook on Wheeler that we took care of at Peabody, and another one, the slip lane was actually removed, and now you have a new design. And this is the final design. You can see instead of having a broken sidewalk, now you have a continuous sidewalk. Now you have to look for traffic here, look for traffic here, look for traffic here, and so forth. And this actually has no benefit to the freeway at all. It's a strictly pedestrian bicycle benefit, but it shows the spirit of what happens if we can work together on this project with ODOT. On the mixed-use area designation, it was a ODOT grant, and we worked on it, and it's part of the Central City packet. The ODOT, we have a concurrency letter allowing the Central City to be a mixed-use area. That means that the congestion standards that apply anywhere else in the state do not apply. Only safety standards, only when there are backups that are significant to the safety operations of the freeway, does ODOT have a legal way to say, wait a minute, what are you doing? So that provides a lot of flexibility to the central city and to the city as a whole to continue to grow the way that our plans envision. So again, only safety is a consideration. That's a big and important outcome of all this effort. So to summarize, and this is in your table, we have about 8 sentences. The implications of Commissioner Smith's amendment is basically that by taking it out, we're basically taking out this project. We are taking out an innovative design that replaced a not very innovative design back in the 90s that enhances safety for the freeway, but as well as for the local system. All that rebuilt and seismic upgrades, that doesn't happen. The critical links that we identified as part of the pedestrian and bicycle system, and that they were endorsed by our bicycle and pedestrian advisory committees, they don't happen. The lids are not a possibility unless this happens, and the development and urban design opportunities that Joe spoke about. The accessibility and livability to the adjacent neighborhoods makes a big difference when you're going over a lid versus you're going over just a bridge. As I mentioned already, they eliminated the long-standing project that was there in the RTP. I'm sure it's many times more expensive than what we're proposing here. And this project was a condition. This is the safety project that allows the Lloyd District to meet the MMA responsibilities. And also removing this project, it's already in the TSP, and it's already in the comp plan that you just adopted. So taking it out, taking such a huge regional project out of the TSP has basically, I don't think we've ever done that. So, but it basically makes us out of compliance with the regional transportation plan. In the hierarchies that we have to be in compliance with the RTP, and so we could be challenged on that regard as well. So for all of that, and because we have worked very hard with the community to have a good project, I think we strongly recommend that as much as we like Commissioner Smith, that you do not advance this amendment today. So, anything else?
Any questions, and then I assume you would like to explain your
I would.
amendment. Okay, first of all, just any kind of clarifying questions on kind of what was presented? Go ahead, Jeff,
Can you
and
just
then Eli.
very, very briefly explain the lid a little bit more? Physically, what's it going to look like? Is it simply...
Just imagine basically you take the trusses, the concrete trusses that would typically, or I guess steel, make up a bridge or viaduct where Broadway goes across the freeway. And you turn them perpendicular to the sides of this trench, as I call it, but the cut that the freeway sits in, and then they're kind of like floor joists that are just perpendicular to the sides, and you spread them along. That's why the size of these, you see how it's sort of an odd, you may wonder why it goes as far north and far south as it goes. It's just part of the engineering. Right, and so that carries the load. and it's, I guess, the overall way that it's attached to the sides and what happens is as cost competitive as if those were independent structures. And all of the freeway activity, all the freeway improvements, other than the relocated ramps, are in the trench.
Eli and then Michelle.
Can we get a little discussion of induced demand? As I'm someone who, this is a route I would drive, but I avoid it sometimes. I imagine I'm not the only one like that. So I assume that's part of your analysis. I'd like to hear a little bit about that and what you see as on the highway piece of it. If you open up more capacity there, how that jives with other goals of the comprehensive plan.
When we did the analysis, as I mentioned, the congestion benefit also is on the elimination of the crashes, the non-recurring congestion. The congestion benefit of just adding more lane was very limited. It's just, and it's actually, that was trying to make it, so it isn't. Basically, you're fixing something, certainly there's an improvement, but it's not very large. If you are familiar with the freeway system, it's congested to the north, it's congested to the south. If you're going to I-84, you're just going to be congested as you enter I-84. So it has limited utility, but it does have a very significant safety and non-recurring congestion benefit. So we're not sure what the induced demand, I don't know if that gets modeled. It's potential, but we think it's not very large compared to the benefits that you get to improve the multimodal system that you have, that you see in these pictures.
Eli, the way I asked that question in 2012 was whether there was a TDM alternative to the freeway widening. And the answer I got, and Mauricio can correct me if I have this wrong, is that essentially there's so much latent demand that any TDM program would simply find more demand to fill the holes it created. So.
Now, we did a TDM part as the Lloyd, but again, so much of the traffic is regional in nature, so there's a limited benefit and we do want to pursue all the tools, TDM and access, but there's a lot of need through this corridor. Again, we have 4 freeways joining it. Sometimes our model actually show a little bit of benefit, if I recall, and actually took off a little bit of the traffic off of MLK and Vancouver Williams, and not enough for me to report it, because it's a model, So there are plus and minuses as a result of this.
I do remember when we were doing the quadrant plan that we did spend a lot of time talking about and had numbers around safety and the number of crashes currently and the number of incidents and that they thought could be avoided as a part of this, and that information would be really useful, I think.
I have an old graphic. I don't have updated numbers, but maybe. I had a lot of extra cool stuff to show you, but of course it's gonna be. Oh, don't tell me it's gone. Oh, it's gone. Sorry. Yeah, we do have numbers, and it showed again, as I mentioned, is the number 1 crash area of crashes in the state, in the Oregon side of the state system.
But it's not an area where we get fatalities. Typically, they're more like
Correct.
rear-end collisions, right?
Right. That's at least that was back in the day. Yeah, I think it's the same.
Michelle.
So is there an environmental impact report on it?
ODOT is working on if we were to proceed, ODOT is working on getting on an environmental assessment that's going to be done, I think, this year. This calendar year is going to begin. That's going to get into all that, the environmental studies that are needed for this project. Go ahead.
I was just going to say broadly, what do we think it costs?
Oh, the cost? There's a cost. There has not been a formal project designed, at the level. It's about $450 million as of today.
The 3 lines in the TSP that I'm about to move that we removed total to about $350 million.
Roughly.
But we believe that's low at this point, right?
Yeah, that was probably all numbers. And those are unconstrained, so it doesn't affect our TSP line, it's basically.
Somebody else's money.
Is it all someone else's money, or is there some match percentage local?
One of the 3 TSP projects, it's $10 million from the city for local improvements. You can kind of assume some of the surface improvements. That's our TSP template for some sort of a local contribution at this
We'll
point.
debate that before the evening's over.
But,
So any other clarifying questions? And then if not, we'll let Chris explain his amendment. Nope.
Okay.
Go ahead, Chris. Oh, okay, Mike and then Chris.
My guess is, Chris will probably get into this, but given the decisions that were made when they were made, is it possible that a different decision might have come out in terms of priorities? I mean, I'm impressed with the presentation, but are there other things, thinking of Vision Zero and so forth? I'm just wondering
yeah.
if it might have come out differently in the final analysis with the, I mean, you can't
Yeah, we don't
predict
think,
that, but-
we don't think so, in the sense that, this is a great opportunity to, once in a maybe generation to work with ODOT and solve something. Before, ODOT came up with a plan, we didn't like it. The city came up with a plan, they didn't like it, nothing ever happened, That's, we ended up with projects that, were not real things. Now we have an opportunity to have a project significantly downscaled, significantly more affordable than we had before, that actually does something for the surface. That is good. As I mentioned already, we have, this is a regional project, and we have worked very hard in the last few years with the city on many things, and we encourage improve multimodal access, particularly bike, walking, and transit. This has a very strong component in all those three, replacing those 5 bridges. If you live in that area, these are key portals into the central city and into those areas. And as I mentioned, this is a corridor that experiences high crashes. We looked at it. We had a very lively discussion with the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee that we needed. And we have good recommendations that improve this. So we think that it very closely fits with our goals, and this was just adopted by City Council and you no less than a year ago. So we think it is very relevant for today.
Okay, so apologize in advance, I'm going to make a speech here. But before I do that, let me formally make the motion and move that we remove TSP projects with IDs 20119, 20120, 20121 from the TSP.
Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. So I don't dispute anything that Mauricio and Joe said, and I still think this is a horrible idea. We last looked at this in 2012. I mean, yes, formally we put it in the TSP as part of the comp plan, but we didn't really examine it in that process. The last time we examined this was in 2012. Things are different than they were in 2012. I'll just note a few things since then. We have adopted another iteration of our climate action plan, which again makes the point that we need to be reducing the amount of driving in the city of Portland. We adopted a comp plan that has similar policies about reducing vehicle miles traveled. We went from debating a propane terminal to essentially stopping the expansion of fossil fuel infrastructure in Portland. We have doubled down on our carbon reduction strategies. At 450 or 500 million, this will be the largest single public investment in the Central City during the period of the Central City Plan, and it has as its core purpose making driving easier. I think that is a backwards policy. And yes, there are a huge number of good things that this plan does. I don't dispute that, but neither can I ignore that the first thing it does is make driving easier. And I think that there are other solutions to the various other benefits that this creates that can be done without having to make driving easier. I just want to contrast the scale of investment. We had a 2-year-long debate about getting the citizens of Portland to approve a gas tax that will provide $64 million over 4 years. But somehow ODOT's going to spend almost 10 times that for things that are not the core policies that we have put in the Portland plan and the comp plan. And I think perhaps the most discordant thing for me is how this fits in Vision Zero. So we have adopted a focus that our key priority for the transportation system is essentially to stop killing people. And I have kept you abreast over the last year about how we killed 45 people on our streets last year. None of them died on this stretch of the freeway. We don't kill people on this stretch of the freeway. We do kill people regularly on the orphan highways that ODOT is responsible for. but ODOT is not choosing to invest in 82nd and Outer Powell. We're basically, we've been told, well, we're going to apply for Tiger grants to finish Outer Powell. So, bit by bit, we'll get it done. But somehow, $500 million is going to materialize to make driving easier in the middle of the central city. What I know, and widely reported, is if you live east of I-205, you are 2.5 times more likely to die in traffic than if you live west of I-205. But the number one thing we're going to invest in is making driving easier on a piece of freeway. That is a massive misallocation of resources. It's not in alignment with our policies that we have worked on very hard here in the Portland plan and the comp plan. And we shouldn't send the signal that we're going to go along to get along and do it. So that's why I'm making this motion.
Discussion?
I didn't realize that last time we met, I was making this dramatic statement about how I didn't want to cover freeways and not do the work that needs to happen in East Portland. And so I really don't think that, I really think I believe what I said last time. And so I'm interested in hearing what everyone says, but I'm inclined to support this change.
Michelle?
Then I'll go.
Okay, and then Andre.
So those are clearly important points, but at this point, I'd rather keep it in the plan, allow the planning process to go forward. Our goals also include improving multimodal transportation, improving freight infrastructure. Canada to Mexico, they may not be speaking to us much longer, but assuming they are, that's a major route. And to the extent we can improve that, particularly given the issues with the shipping container at the port and the inability to get things out, that may get better as well, but we don't know. In terms of, where the federal government is with the infrastructure, again, we don't know where it's going to end up, but we do have this big, FAST Act that's supposed to be supporting freight investment. There may be opportunities here for some sort of public-private partnership that doesn't abuse citizens broadly and somehow leverages this money, the cost of the project, with the benefit that's associated with increased developability of these parcels. And we've talked about wanting to take advantage of those types of leverage things. So there's a lot of potential here, and I'd rather stay in conformance with the existing plans, let the planning process go forward, look at alternatives, figure out things like, shifting demand, and just let it play out so we actually have the data.
First, I agree with part of what Chris is saying, and back in 2012, I think Chris and I were on the same page in moving forward on the transportation plan and saying that we wanted to make sure that it didn't impact East Portland, that the plan was a balanced plan, that there was money in there for East Portland. And at the time, and just recently in the comp plan, we worked with Art and everybody at Transportation to ensure that the downtown budget for transportation did not eat into East Portland or anybody else's budget. As they did, the TSP came back with Central City's budget for, and so the TSP was complete. And we adopted that and said that was great. I think the thing that you need to keep in mind when you look at this project, and depending on how this vote goes, if it fails, I have an amendment to this that basically says yes, but let's protect East Portland. But what is different about this project is this is the crown jewel of the transportation budget sitting in Salem. This project is. It is a regional project. If you talk outside of the city, it is a project that has interest from East Oregon, Southern Oregon, from a transportation standpoint. It really is for them jobs to get their trucks through Portland and reduce that time to the other side. Yes, it's $450 million. It's a lot of money. My concern is that you have a transportation bill down in Salem. We in Portland are looking at our project, but we're also looking at East Portland. My concern, along with Chris, and I think a lot of people here, is these projects like this come into a city, especially the city of Portland, and they suck every dollar. Selwood took $100 million out of the budget at $8 million at a chunk in transportation. East Portland suffered dramatically when that happened, and a lot of projects got zeroed out in transportation budgets. The concern I have is, as you move forward with this project, that we ensure that Portland has a discussion and ensures that this project goes ahead. But to Chris's point, there are projects, 82nd, Powell, Outer Powell, that need funding in East Portland to facilitate better transportation. TriMet's working very diligently to do an enhanced transportation plan. PBOT has put that as part of the TSP. TriMet has bought into it. ODOT's willing to fund it, but you have to have a project that gets transportation dollars out of the state. And this project brings it. I believe you can protect East Portland with some language that we can pass to council, and I think council's willing to say, yes, we will work to protect. And so that the elephant in the room is, this project comes forward, there's a big ask, and Portland has to put in an incredible amount of money. Projects now are funding up to 45%. You have to put in that amount of money. You take it out of your current budget to fund it. I think we can protect against that. I think we can do Vision Zero. I think we can do a lot of things going forward. And it is an investment not only in this project, but I think it facilitates a lot of other projects in the city around Vision Zero that come from state money also. To Chris's point, and I would just emphasize, the investment of $450 million doesn't come back. In terms of, if you say it's 450, it doesn't come back as $450 million back to the city of Portland if you didn't do this project. It's not a one-to-one dollar coming back. So, yeah, there may be dollars that if you didn't do this project, you may get some other money, but it's not a one-to-one investment. And the last thing I would leave you with is, in our previous meeting, we passed an amendment to look at the African-American community around this project. One of the things that this project does do, and ODOT has already started that process, is working with the African-American community even before they get to the EIS to look at what can be done to ensure, because if you look at those two pictures that were shown, kind of the before and after, that was the central African-American community that the freeway was built through. And there is, ODOT is recognizing this project could help repair some of that healing process for the community. Not saying that's a sole reason to do this project by any means, but it is an opportunity for the community to come together and look at those lids as opportunities for their community to see how they can be recognized as that African-American community, which doesn't exist today in that neighborhood. So I would recommend that we say no to this, and that we look at amendment that basically, I think, provides some very short language that Mauricio is supportive of, PBOT supportive of, ODOT supportive of, that would ask the question when this project comes up to, and it's number 3 up there, have a discussion that the City of Portland funding sources and trade-offs is essential so that you have this discussion that Chris is really asking to have, that, so it'd be limited to multiple aspects of the project, and does not reduce planned investments to fund transportation improvements in the support of Vision Zero, safety, livability investments in East Portland. So we're preserving that, we're having that discussion, and it's at the time that this project comes through. And to the extent that this is going to be the largest project of the comp plan, I don't think there's going to be a bridge, so I think this is it.
Well, I'm happy to let Eli go first.
Sure. Eli and then Chris.
You might respond to this a little bit. I appreciate that this should go through the planning process, and I also appreciate that I get to sit, we are part of the planning process. And I think some of Portland's most important decisions are infrastructure projects we didn't do. There's a history of that in this town, and this might be one of them. Some of them were much further along than this. They ended up contributing to the vitality that our city benefits from. So I'm not afraid of sort of saying, okay, we're part of the process here, we can look at it, and I'd be interested to hear probably from Chris or from staff, if we support this amendment, what would be the next step? Because I don't know the full answer to that. But I do come back, I think Chris is pretty compelling. If the argument here, I think there are trade-offs where we put our money, and we try and leverage the best we can for where we put our local money. And if the funding is going, and because you don't get to do all the things, and I think that the list that staff's already come up with is a lot of sweeteners to what's otherwise a highway safety improvement project that does more to save cars and slight injuries than fatalities. And I think that what you propose are additional sweeteners that make the deal sweeter and sweeter. But the question still comes back to me: is this where you put the big emphasis? And so I'm curious, knowing that if we support this amendment, it takes us a little out of sync for what's also passed. What would be the response? If it's just a downer, we lose a whole bunch of money, then it's hard to get excited about it. But if there's some way that we could propose reallocation or active transportation, what could we get for this amount of money in terms of making our city a safer place to live? That's what I'd like to hear a little bit more of that.
Okay. So I'll respond to that in part. I would like to say first that, if my amendment fails, I still very much hope that it's going to succeed, but if it fails, I will be supportive of Andre's language for the reasons that he outlined. I'm going to make a process argument for why you should vote for this. We're not the final decision body here. Obviously, we're recommending to City Council, and I believe that by taking these projects out of the TSP, we create the best possible debate at City Council. If we leave it in, perhaps with some language, as Andre suggests, that will go through as one of 1,367 items in the Central City Plan, and will not necessarily get council scrutiny unless some advocacy groups decide to make it an issue and take it to council. On the other hand, if we take them out, council's in the position where they have to reconcile the regional transportation plan, which has this project, so they either have to put it back in, or they have to go to the regional table and talk about why it should come out of the RTP. So that will put council in the position of, I'm certain some commissioner will propose an amendment to put it back in, and there can be debate and a public hearing around that amendment, and we can have the kind of focus that I think will bring out the citizens of Portland, as the Pembina project did, to talk about their values related to climate. So I think the best moment we could have a council around the freeway happens if we take this out, not if we leave it in. So I would urge you from a process point of view to consider supporting the amendment. To Eli's point about reallocating the dollars, well, these are dollars that the Oregon Transportation Commission allocates. Our ability as the Planning Commission for the City of Portland to influence that is not strong. So I think this is, in my mind, this is about not taking money and spending it to bad purposes as much as it is to trying to redirect it to good purposes. I think Portland could and should go to the Oregon Transportation Commission and make an argument that their highest priority in Portland should be the orphan freeways. Orphan highways, not the freeway system, that they have that backwards. We could recommend to council that get put on the legislative agenda for the city. I think that's a large part of what I see as backwards here is there are things that are far more important on the facilities that ODOT is responsible for than this problem.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Couple of comments. And I've learned to have enormous respect, Chris, for your knowledge on transportation issues. And I think it's great that you bring these kind of items to us. But I think from a process standpoint, this would be a very dramatic action by this planning commission. And I think the city council would have looked to us to have a hearing. I mean, we have no testimony. We have no evidence. We have, Chris, and Andre, you bring obviously a lot of knowledge and expertise. But if we were going to take this pretty dramatic action, sort of undoing what the city has done and regional partners have done, we should have had a public hearing on it. We should have been able to get the kind of testimony you're saying, let's dump it on the city council. I think our job was to do that first, and I think we failed. I mean, this was just, I think you came up too late with it, Chris. I think we should have made this part of the central city plan, allowed ODOT, allowed other advocates and constituencies, so we could be the first hearing body on, is this a good idea? And so I'm comfortable doing something, as I'm using the term dramatic, because it would send a lot of ripples out just based on our own informal decision to do it, without our own work session, without our own public hearing on it. I think the council would not appreciate that, sort of throwing the problem to them. So I'm not going to support it primarily for that reason. And I've got another broader policy.
So can
issue.
I ask one
Sure.
question on that? Because I also was not on the commission. When the Northeast Quadrant Plan came through, did we at that point in time have hearings or discussions on these issues?
Yes, we had discussion on the land use side, and we had its own presentation, very much like this on this project, and we went
So-
through the elements.
And on the stakeholder committee for that project, there were 2 or 3 people who voted against the plan on that basis. There's a minority on the stakeholder committee who opposed the freeway.
Right, it was
I was the
30
only one here to vote against the freeway at the time.
30 member, I believe, I think we had a 3-member.
Just take one more moment, if I may, Chair, just to share a policy perspective. And Andre, you touched on this, sort of the regional focus on this. I happened to be in a transportation forum in Washington County last week. The port was there, and it's interesting. I realize we're the Portland Planning Commission, but there's a very different perspective in Washington County and statewide about the importance of freight and the problems. Businesses are hurting because of congestion. I mean, business after businesses, and not just the Intels and the Nikes, but a lot of viable smaller businesses, smaller, they employ 50, 100 people, they just truck a lot of stuff to the airport. And they all complain, that they all said it's hurting their bottom line, it's hurting their ability to expand, it's hurting their ability to get more businesses in the Washington County area. So it's having a real economic impact. And I realize the solutions are not Portland-centric. They weren't concerned about Vision Zero. They weren't concerned about the issues we're rightly concerned about. But they are very, very concerned about this bottleneck. And it was described, as we've heard from Andre, it's the highest priority project ODOT's funding. And these were people from Eastern Oregon supporting it. Certainly everyone in Washington County supported it. The port supported it. So I think we should be somewhat cognizant, even though it's not the highest economic priority for the city, perhaps, and we have a slightly different vision of how transportation dollars are spent. We are part of a statewide and a regional economy. And I think we would be doing a disservice to that partnership to not recognize the value other people see in this project, even if it doesn't fit all the criteria we want to impose on a large transportation project. It's certainly, I was actually approached by someone from the port and a business leader in Hillsborough at this hearing at this meeting saying, is Portland reconsidering this? We've heard the planning commissions. So I don't know how this got out. Maybe you talked to ODOT, but they were like starstruck and asking me, is this true? Is there some kind of reconsideration?
Well, Commissioner, if I could offer a policy rebuttal to that. I am very much concerned about our ability to move freight through the region. It is critical to our economy, which is why I wish we would stop investing for freight in facilities that will be 90% used by single occupancy vehicles. The best thing we could do for freight is a congestion pricing scheme, because the economic value of freight will be happy to pay the tolls that will keep some of the SOVs off the roads. So just adding lanes doesn't really help
I'm
freight.
certainly not going to have a policy debate with you. And I'm not defending the perspective of the port in Eastern Oregon and Washington County. I'm just sort of recognizing this, the city signed off on this project in a partnership with all these other entities. And whether there are better ideas than this, I don't know. I'm just making the point that before we sort of diss all these regional partners, we should be aware of how important it is to them. And my final point is, and Andre, I certainly support your language, but if I was to think about being someone from the Port of Portland, or a business in Washington County, or a farmer in Eastern Oregon, and I see Portland saying, we will only fund multimodal. We see no benefit in helping the freight move through our city. I don't think that's right. I mean, I think it may not be the priority for the city, but I'll support the language anyway. I'm just making the policy point. If there's benefit for moving freight to the Port of Portland, one of our key economic engines, we don't want to put a penny into that. We will only support other forms of transportation.
If I could just, point of clarification, multimodal freight is one of those modes.
Oh, it is, okay.
That what it's
Understand, great.
basically saying is, don't just pick a winner. This has got to work for that whole sort of spectrum, including bikes, peds, and freight.
So when it says city funding will be limited to multimodal, you're telling me everything's multimodal.
As long as it's designed right.
So I'm not sure what that language does, but I digress. I'm sorry, Chris, I can't support it. I think it would be a mistake for this commission to sort of diss the region and on our own, without a public hearing, take that action. So.
Okay, so I saw a lot of hands go up. So Michelle, then Eli, then Andre.
I just want to say that I think congestion pricing has equity issues as well, because there are people that need to be in their horrible, evil car to get to work because we don't currently have sufficient transit to get them where they need to be. So I don't want to demonize the single occupancy vehicle. Some people need to use it, and we do need to get the trucks through at this point. So that's my equity argument.
I feel like I just heard from Mauricio that this wouldn't help the trucks get through. When I asked the induced demand question,
Excuse me?
am I missing something? You said that it would fill up. Okay, we asked about induced demand. You
Yeah.
said it would fill up immediately.
So
Does that mean trucks are easier to get through somehow?
there are, well, adding a lane does have some benefit. Travel delay is, there's a lot of congestion. You can be stuck there for a long time.
Sure.
You'll be stuck for a little bit less. It just so also, a lot of the congestion on freeways in general, about 50%, if I remember a number, comes from crashes and accidents. In getting things, the car shut down, you remove it. That's a benefit. I don't know if you adding a shoulder and auxiliary lane really helps with that.
I'm having a little hard time with one answer to the question sort of says, okay, you're not going to increase driving because you're not adding much more traffic. And then I hear the answer to the same question. I'm hearing, oh, but trucks will get through better because that's what people seem to want. This seems like a little familiar to the CRC discussion where trucks were brought up a lot. And then I heard, oh, they just go on 205 anyway and they go at weird hours.
And so there's a benefit for every day, but it's limited. You're still going to be stuck in traffic. The issue that happens is that freight tends to travel not on the peaks. People travel on the commute, so they travel at a time in which they're not stuck in congestion.
So is there an issue? Why do they need this?
Well, they need it because there are instances in which there's also congestion in the midday and improves with that. And there are crashes that happen randomly, sometimes in the middle of the day. Sometimes trucks cannot travel in the middle of the day because they've been stuck in traffic and they're behind schedule and they get stuck on the peaks. Furthermore, the design that we have allows better access in Lower Albina for local distribution, because of the improvements on the local network that we just talked about. So there are many reasons, for it.
And just in the discussions during the process from ODOT, one of the arguments was that reducing the number of accidents, these fender benders, because of the different weaving to get through the intersection, reduces the unpredictable incidents of extreme delay. And so if you're a freight hauler, that predictability of knowing at 5 o'clock I can still move through, but here's the chance, and I can schedule my deliveries through there, was part of the big appeal because the accidents are unpredictable and unpredictable in terms of how long they hold up the situation. You know, and when I heard your question about induced demand, Commissioner, I think it would be unrealistic for us to represent that if capacity is created through even these improvements that we're just talking about for any segment of freeway anywhere, you're not going to fill up the use of that capacity. Predictability of the flow, which is related to safety, is more of the answer. Once you have a system that operates better than that, truckers and others who are making choices now to go other ways because this is unpredictable and doesn't have that result may choose to come back, but the net result is that the overall piece of infrastructure that we have operates more efficiently for what it is, and it stays within the trench. It's still a lot of money and has these opportunity cost debates, but the project on its own is not so much like CRC in that regard.
Just for context, actually, the cost is 450 million. About half of it is the local component, the crossings, the lids and stuff. So it's a significant source of the revenue, of the money is for the local system. So that's something to keep in context.
So Andre, Chris, and then go.
Can I toss a process question to finish my note?
Sure.
Is, if we supported this amendment, could city council kick it back to us to take testimony? If they felt like they wanted, respecting your question? I mean, there was an opportunity for testimony on this issue when we had testimony on the Central City Plan. We didn't hear much of anything on this one. Is that an option that the city council could take?
They could. They would probably say we did hear testimony. I mean, we did have this conversation. Obviously, we didn't raise these issues in the same way at that time. It's been 4 years, and so things have changed. It's unlikely that they would pick one item out of the entire Central City Plan and send it back to us. So my experience would tell me that likely they would make the decision there and have testimony there at council and not kick it back to us.
And if I could add to that, they will take testimony on the Central City Plan. So to the extent that even this discussion shined a light on this particular choice, there's a chance for that testimony. The testimony on this will take place beginning of this summer by the time we get there. So there's a timing issue with the decision that I think was part of what was provoking this, timing vis-a-vis the state discussion.
Can I add one more, and then you won't have to listen to me about this? But in terms of process, I think that if we say no and don't offer a proposal as something else that we want instead, it will be seen like a lot of commissions where they're just saying no and whining more or less and not proposing a proposal to come back with something else. So even if the group decides to support Chris, I would suggest that you have something else as a proposal, and it's not just seen as we don't want this and we're pulling it out, because they will see it as you just pulled it out at the last minute and said no, and you didn't offer something else.
Okay, so I think it was Andre, Mike, and Teresa, if I remember.
I'm in there
Oh,
somewhere.
Chris and Teresa, sorry. Sorry, no, it's Chris. I just remember it was over here.
I just would, I wanted to point out a couple of things. One of the reasons, and go back to where Chris talked about, that this particular item was brought up by Chris at the time and said he didn't want it. But the reason that at the time, there probably was not focused testimony like there is today from Bike.org and other people writing editorials about it, is that it did not have funding. It really did not have funding. And so it's, when you look at the TSP list, it's in the unfunded, it's in the wish list, truly wish list, and when you're talking $350 million, there's projects that have been on there 30, 40 years, and they just don't move. They just stay on the list. CRC has been on there and still is on there and will be on there for the next whatever. So all of a sudden it has funding, it has interest, and that has brought, fairly or unfairly, the spotlight to this project. I would say removing it runs a risk, and Jeff highlighted the issue, is that it really will be the rest of the state, and it's not a reason to vote yes or no, looking at Portland saying, what are they doing? We're trying to help them fund transportation in a broader sense, and we're looking for your help to help us. It will bring other items, and the Transportation Commission, we can't influence them probably, but we can influence them by helping and saying, I think, this is my opinion, we're willing to work with you, but we want something back. And Chris mentioned the orphan freeways, congestion pricing has been addressed. There's a lot of things that we as a city want, but I think we have to look outside if we're going to want those things, because they cost money, and they cost money from a state standpoint, and we need the cooperation of an ODOT. And to do that, having a hearing at council is going to be a big hearing, because this will probably be the number one issue that council sees, with the bike community and others coming to say it's a freeway conversation. And I think we have another opportunity to potentially address many of the issues that we've said today, that we put in the comp plan, that we put in the climate action plan, and we need to send that message. And I agree with everybody here that says we need to send a message about congestion pricing, about our other opportunities in Vision Zero, and investing in orphan freeways in orphan highways in East Portland, and transportation projects. We need to send that message, but it's hard to send that message when you've just told them no to their favorite project.
And just as a clarification, because I think it's important to build on what Andre's saying, this decision that's at the state level, whether or not our action is influential on it or not, I don't know. But that's not money to build this project. That's money to take it to the next stage of analysis and planning so that it stays alive. I mean, that's what even our action in the Northeast Quadrant Plan was, to keep it on the table so that it could ever even have a chance of being evaluated thoroughly and discussed. And so there are decisions all along that line of getting to a DEIS and securing federal funding. And for instance, if the things that we were pointing at tonight that we think were a value proposition in terms of the Northeast Quadrant Plan, the CAP and the like, if when we get to the closer engineering, those disappear, I think we have a whole different discussion for the city of Portland, even considering it. There's a number of decision points down the road. What this does is allows us to continue to be able to advance the designs and see, get more precise information about some of the questions we're asking.
And there's no funding at this point for the project.
So having opened the can of worms on congestion pricing, I feel obligated to elucidate a little bit more. One, I agree there are equity issues with congestion pricing. There would have to be some mechanism that rebates to low-income system users, absolutely. And I would point out that we do have comp plan policy that allows us to explore congestion pricing. It's not like this is a wild and crazy idea. And I would point out that even ODOT and PBOT are thinking about congestion pricing related to this project. You know, the federal fast lane is specifically about congestion pricing after you do improvements. I'm suggesting congestion pricing instead of doing the improvement, that's the solution, not a component of the solution. So we're likely to be talking about congestion pricing in this quarter either way.
Yes. Yeah, congestion pricing is something that's supported in our policies. Now, of course, the detail, you're referring about the details for that, how that happened. As also Chris mentioned, is There are particular rules at the federal level, which I don't understand, but I'll say it something anyway. There are some slots that you need to apply, and there are very specific rules. You cannot toll something existing facility. Typically, it's a replacement or new construction. So in this case, this project would advance the conversation. Would make us more eligible than otherwise be.
Right. And the other thing I'd say in response to Susan, I think we do need to offer a replacement, which is an offer to City Council that if they agree with taking this out, we need to go revisit the Broadway-Weiler corridor and modify the land use plan to achieve our objectives without this investment, because there are important placemaking ideas that are in the plan that don't happen without this, and we would owe it to City Council to go figure out how to make those happen in a different way.
Teresa, and then Andre.
So what I'm struggling with is a little bit about the process. I understand Chris's point, and I think it's a good one. But I'm wondering if we are going to be wielding a foam Nerf bat if we take it out, in that we're making a bunch of noise and hitting people with a Nerf bat, and then we're done. So in order to actually, I wonder if there's alternative methods we can use to daylight the issues that would be a little bit more productive in terms of getting us to some points that we can work at, as opposed to just saying no and forcing a discussion that maybe is just going to get, well, we're going to put it back in, and then it really doesn't achieve very much. In the process of doing the studies, are there not checkpoints before you fund and ways to actually, but the thought is if you get that far, you won't say no because you've already spent money? Is that?
Well, look how far CRC went. There are actually many council moments for a project like this. First, it'll be this, as part of this plan. Then if it moves forward and we need to continue environmental studies with all that, and we require, they require participation to a higher level degree, there's going to be an IGA needed, and that's another council moment. If there's funding and we need to come up with some sort of a local match, that is a very important council moment. So there's going to be several before this becomes something implementable. At each of the steps, a conversation with the public should happen, and we think that this action, we support it because we want this project, but as we said, so much of the value is in the local surface improvements, the lids. So having that item, we are confident that the freeway cannot be constructed without the surface improvements. That's an engineering reality as far as we understand. So it was very well explained, and they're working very hard at it. So, but also some elements like the Clackamas Bridge, may not be so needed as part of construction as the lead. So this language helps us. We are concerned about equity, like this commission. We are concerned about East Portland. We're spending so much effort right now. All the bureaus, PBOT, we're there pretty much every week. So certainly there are instances in the past in which we need to couple up money. It's hard to find. So to us, we are presenting to you not a funding discussion. It's a TSP discussion. It's a menu of options from which we can draw implementation, and each of them has its own council moment. At this point, we're presenting to you a TSP project that it balances out. There's nothing here that, in order to keep these projects in, we need to take out something that you implemented as part of Division Zero of East Portland. It's balanced. Actually, you could even say that taking this project out may hurt Broadway as a high-cost corridor, because how else are we going to really fix those 5 bridges over the Rose Quarter now, unless we come up with $200 million ourselves. So at this point, from a planning perspective, we have a balanced TSP project, and I think that's our responsibility to provide something that is in the RTP, that is not out of compliance, but actually we comply with the laws of the state in Metro, and actually we're leaders in protecting and Oregon state law land use goals. And then there will be many council moments in which we can have a conversation about funding strategy. But this language that Andre proposes really provides a framework that we feel comfortable having this discussion anytime with council, anytime with anybody.
Yes, one quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
As part of the EIR, environmental impact report, Would, is there a way to, or maybe it's already going to be looked at, to analyze the option of congestion pricing as an alternative?
I do not know that. ODOT seems interested in that topic right now. Is likely to be looked at.
So is it something we
It is-
could
it is-
suggest that,
Yeah,
you
it
know,
could be
for
something-
instance, since you're supposed to analyze different options, if that was the an answer that
I'm not
avoided-
sure. I'm not sure. At this point, I do not know. I'm sorry. It
Okay.
could be that what we did, and again, we spent so many years and 85 million. It could satisfy the alternatives analysis. We went through 70 options. You know, I spare you this other 69 tonight. So yeah, yeah. It's. I would assume that they probably thought that we were done through that phase, and we're now basically going through the environmental review and the project. You know, so. But having said that, congestion pricing, it's something that ODOT is discussing right now. So it's very surprising to me, and actually, I'm surprised in a good way.
Okay.
But,
I think Andre was next, and then looks like Michelle.
So the MMA, if we took this out, would it jeopardize the MMA?
It does. The MMA is the mixed-use, multimodal mixed-use area. It's a designation that allows us to really amend our zoning via plans like this, or a developer, a landowner wants to upzone certain property. They have to go through all these bureaucratic hurdles. One of them is ODOT, and what is the impact on the freeway? And it has happened in the past, Central East Side, South Waterfront, in which they said, you know what, your building's extra massing will have an impact on our freeway, therefore we're not allowing this to happen. In one case, they put a trip cap in the Central East Side. You shall not have more than 100 trips a day. That impacts the ability, what we're trying to do with the comp plan, which is absorb 30% of the growth in 3% of the land in the central city. This, allows us, gives us greater flexibility to change our zoning moving forward. With this plan is using the MMA as a way of, addressing all the changes, the FAR discussions you had, the height discussions that you had, and also anything that moves forward from adoption on.
If I could just add, the MMA puts more of the control in the local hands about how it wants to think about capacity and congestion. The state is saying it's going to look at safety on its facilities when we make land use changes, and discussion of capacity, congestion on the local streets, that's all up to the locality. So it allows us as a city to redefine how we want to even evaluate that and move away from, the traditional way of doing it, which is, and move to a more multimodal way. And that whole sort of piece of work of how to move people and goods rather than the cars through a particular intersection is something that you all promoted through the comprehensive plan.
And in the facility plan that we just, that we adopt, we council recommended for adoption, as a language that says, that this plan, this project, given this project, ODOT staff concurs that the MMA designation is appropriate as a city's companion to the Northeast Quadrant. So the MMA is the Lloyd District and all our finance section of the MMA is contingent on this project. And says ODOT must be consulted prior to any plan future amendments within the MMA. And the MMA will remain in effect as long as progress is being made in the implementation of this project. So this project is the safety component that allows us to make the safety clearance, because again, congestion is not something we want to care, but safety is. So we need to address safety as part of this Northeast Quadrant plan in order to get the MMA. We did that around the other parts of the central city with much smaller projects, a signal in the Central East Side, a minor project, related to this in the PSU area. This is the big one, But this allows us to have an MMA, and it's, it's basically a condition that was written in the facility plan.
And a follow-up question to the TSP, because this is in the unfunded side, when, let's say it was funded, would transportation come back to the Planning Commission to amend the TSP to move it and for redistribution of projects into?
Yeah. What you have, yeah, what you have here, you have, it's, two projects are,
There's three projects.
yeah,
and-
one of
and
them is constrained.
Constrained.
For
and
10 million.
Yeah, the others
That is
are
are basically the city part, and two of them are in the unconstrained list.
constrained. But
So
if they
those-
were funded, would they move into the constrained list? And
They're
would that
not-
come back to,
Yeah, they're not our
Yes.
projects. They have ODOT as the implementer, so, I don't think so. Those projects are constrained for the RTP, for the Regional Transportation Plan, but for us, they're not part of our budget, so it's,
but if we were putting money into them, we'd still wouldn't take a look?
I'm not sure we have to.
Okay.
no.
Okay.
Um,
But back to the MMA, if we say no, Joe, do we have to go back and look at the northwest quadrant in terms of development?
I would say that the state, we would lose, it would be reasonable, I don't know, MMAs are new, and losing an MMA is even newer, but there would be there'd be a process to reevaluate it, because I'm sure the state would want us to make the case that the safety improvements they're counting on being possible with some version of this project are provided some other way. And what's within our control to do that is really just the amount of traffic, I guess, that we load onto the freeway, and the most direct implication we have for that is either creating extraordinary new transit or reducing our development expectations.
So Eli and then Michelle, and if possible, if we could kind of make this our kind of final wrap-up thoughts so that we could take a vote on Chris's motion, that'd be great.
If safety is the main metric, at what point does the analysis happen? Per Chris's quote at the beginning, you're more than 2 times as likely to die east of 205 than west of 205. At some point, someone presumably would think through, where does it make sense to invest for safety? How does this compare to other ways of investing for
Yeah,
safety?
For the state, they are the managers of the freeway system. This is this #1 safety spot in the state, okay? That's their priority, not ours, but certainly we share safety as a concern for everybody. Within the city of Portland, we have a Vision Zero plan that addresses safety. There are many lines this side of East Portland, and we can go back here and see them. We have a lot of attention in East Portland, and their need is there. But look at this network. This is a citywide issue. Safety is a citywide issue. It's a Central City issue. It's an East Portland issue, Northeast Portland, Southwest Portland. Yes, and we're spending a lot of attention there, and we have many projects, and we're actively working on them. These are not mutually exclusive.
We're not leveraging state funds in those locations.
Well, we have Out of Powell Phase 1 is $20 million that we have. We are working, we're all pulling everything we can get to, working with our state legislatures, doing everything we can to fund projects everywhere, particularly East Portland.
Michelle?
I was just going to say, in terms of the ability of the environmental impact statement to evaluate whether or not congestion pricing would completely deal with the issues, I think it's going to turn on how you define what the project goals are. So, again, I'm supportive of just letting the process go forward, letting the detailed analysis happen so we have more information.
So I'm just going to kind of, as a final thought, share, first of all, Chris, as always, a very persuasive, logical, passionate plea, and greatly appreciate your insight and your thoughts. And ever since you brought it up to me, it's been one I've been wrestling with. And I think that's exactly where I'm a little bit, if you want to say, hung up. I'm still wrestling with it. There's a lot on the table here, a lot being discussed. I feel like there has been opportunities for some public input that I wasn't a part of to get to hear, but hasn't come up since. So I'm inclined to, as Michelle has raised and Teresa's raised, let the process kind of play itself out, continue to support the discussion in any way we can, which would, if it's meaning supporting Andre's amendment, continue to push on congestion, pricing, and other modes and continue to push on making sure we don't lose our priority in East Portland, but go ahead and and let this study kind of move forward so that we can start answering, I guess, all the questions that I still have in my mind. I can't be the only one with them. So are there any other kind of final thoughts that people want to share? If not, why don't we go ahead and take a vote on that, Julie?
No.
No?
Yes.
This is a tough one. I really feel like I need to vote yes on it.
While I'm really supportive of a lot of the goals of this and a lot of the insights you provided, Chris, I'm very concerned about the process issues, and I'm very concerned about the relationship of Portland to the rest of the state, so I need to vote no.
No.
Yes.
While I support the thoughts behind it, and I think we should really follow the process and make sure we take all those checkpoints and those opportunities, I would have to vote no, but I would look forward to Andre's amendment.
No, and I think I already explained my thought behind that. So thank you, Chris. I do appreciate the discussion that we all have, and I want you to know that I am completely supportive of your efforts to keep pushing this forward and keep this conversation going and taking it to council in other ways besides pulling it from the TSP.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the thoughtful discussion, colleagues.
I would like to move that we amend the TSP, their item, and add item 3. The other two are already,
The act, yeah, this is a, rather than a TSP, this basically is an action, what we're proposing, you're proposing. It's an action that says, keep those projects in. But there are three things that we want, as we move forward with them. One is that, not just build one element, build all of them, all what we presented today. Secondly, that, as we've done with Southwest Corridor, which was here not too long ago, and we're doing with Division BRT, major projects have an impact, we have the ability to look at an equity component to it, particularly in this area in which, there's a history, a sad history often with the African-American community, and what can we do to address that to the best ability, of the project's ability. So that's bullet number 2, an equity one. And the third one is that, as we talked about here, that there be transparency and a public discussion about how is it that the city contributes financially to the project, and make sure that all the stuff that we talked about and we all care about, safety, East Portland, are protected as part of that discussion. So it's all of them as we had discussed.
So it looks like Mike has a question.
Yeah, I supported Chris's amendment because I think it is important to send a message to council. Sometimes we do it with a letter, sometimes we do it with a vote. I'm not seeing Chris's other concerns reflected in this amendment, though, with regard to climate change. And so I'm just wondering, I'm asking the question whether there's a number 4 that might go up there that would convey that issue as well. Well, I was asking the question before I seconded it, but I'll second it.
Thanks for cleaning that up. Chris.
So I'll attempt to answer Mike's question by offering an amendment to Andre's amendment, which would be to add that that we encourage ODOT and PBOT to look at congestion pricing as a project component specifically to mitigate climate impacts.
I think that, that was all 3 of these with the 4th. So I guess, so question maybe to the broader group at Chris, since you, on your amendment, are there other and this is my naivety, other items just besides congestion pricing that would also
Well,
affect
so
climate
the
impact
other,
that we should, I mean, if we're going to do it, I mean, why limit it? I guess is where I'm going with it.
right, so, I mean, I guess the other big issue, for my motion that doesn't really get addressed here is we want to tell the Oregon Transportation Commission to step up and deal with the orphan highways, right? But the Central City Plan is probably not the vehicle to do that, but, that's what I want to, throw water in their faces and tell them to do.
I mean, we're here. I don't know why we can't encourage the city of Portland to encourage the Transportation Commission to fund the orphan highways along with this project. We think it's part of Portland, I mean, in a greater sense, right? I mean, I don't see why we
As
can't.
part of this project?
Not as part of this project, but as part of achieving all the goals of Portland.
Of a part of the Central City.
Well, achieving all the goals of Portland, not only the Central City goals.
Okay, I'm still spinning on how this all gets accomplished. So Michelle, and then it looked like Jeff, maybe your hand was up.
So 2 questions. What's the rationale? I'm not sure what form this takes. Is it a recommendation in a letter, or does it somehow become a policy in the plan? And then with number 3, we're saying we're going to have public discussion, but then in the next sentence, we're saying what city funding is going to be limited to. So it seems like we're saying public discussion, but we've already decided what the conclusion is going to be. So I'm questioning that language, even though I understand
So,
why
yeah,
that's important.
And I guess I agree, and that kind of helps with the whole question about the orphan highways. So what is this, can you guys explain, is this getting added to the TSP or the Central City Plan, or what are we doing here?
The discussion we had earlier was to include this as an action in the plan. I think it's probably also a really good idea for you to include this in your letter transmitting the plan to council.
So to that, then, so it does seem to me if it's an action, could we not, as an action, include studying the orphan highways, studying other alternatives to climate reduction, in addition to, along with congestion pricing? I mean, walk me through the thought process here.
I don't think it's unreasonable, because what you're doing here is saying if you're going to support a project at Broadway Weidler, then you must also, it's contingent on investments in East Portland is what that more or less says, and some other things. You could add it's contingent on studying congestion pricing and other TDM measures, both pricing and TDM measures. I would probably broaden it to those 2. You could add this 3rd one. It's stretching it a little bit in that there's not quite as much nexus as these 2, as having congestion pricing and TDM, because it's starting to solve the same problem.
So are there other locations where the action for orphan highways would be more appropriate?
Definitely in the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, right,
Right.
But I'm
That's
thinking
what-
in the Central City Plan, it's probably not the right place.
Right,
Okay.
and if you read the first sentence, if you can imagine a construction that says as a condition of, the following conditions are placed on the city's participation in the project. If it could be phrased as what seemed like a reasonable condition on our participation in the Broadway Weidler I-5 interchange project, then, one could. It strikes me as that's relevant, as Susan said, to the East Portland whole objective, and more far-reaching than just the Broadway Weidler I-5 project.
Yeah, I forgot we're just focused on Central City now. So yeah, it does seem a little broad.
We could put it in the orphan highways in our letter and make sure it's part of, if any of us happen to testify.
Well, I'm sure there'll be somebody testify. We just told Chris we'd support him. At least I did, so I'm there to support you too. So,
Actually,
and I
yeah.
feel more comfortable with that personally.
There's also the RTP, there's the Regional Transportation Plan. There's also an opportunity for this body to potentially say something at that body
Okay.
through that process.
So in terms of process, I'd suggest a friendly amendment to this that someone puts forward, and then you could vote on this? In terms of
I
adding the
think we
fourth
had the
item.
friendly amendment.
Right.
And would you be comfortable adding TDM?
I'm
or
happy to add
broadening it?
TDM to that if my seconder is. Okay.
Okay, so I think that covers that. Any more discussion?
I guess I'm quite confused. So we're saying in the TSP's support for these projects, the TSP has these projects.
Yeah.
And we want language that says, but that support gets nullified if you do not comply with these things. So the first one says contingent on the project containing all elements. So the project gets redesigned, repackaged, it's ready to go for funding, and one element's gone. Is someone going to have a legal argument that says element 14 is gone, city no longer can keep it on its TSP? I mean, are we trying to propose binding conditions on the city's support? Or are we trying to say, here's some policy concerns we want to be sure get carried forward as this project evolves? Or the latter?
Like everything in the comprehensive plan or the central city plan, it gets balanced. And so it's not, it's,
Where's this going? In the TSP itself, in the central city plan?
this is going in the central city
City
plan
plan, and you said these are
as
going
an
to be
action
action
item.
items.
Yeah.
But they're being characterized as support for these TSP projects is contingent on these action items happening? Or I'm
Well, the,
confused from what's a policy, what's a,
Action items are adopted by non-binding resolution.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's almost like intent. And the way I would expect this to be used is as we're progressing forward with this project, if, for instance, facilities that are in the plan we showed you today don't make the final cut for budgetary reasons or otherwise, the mere fact of that happening doesn't mean that your decision about the TSP becomes invalid. However, you're making clear that the package that you considered, and part of why the balancing that you're doing at this point to keep it in the TSP was assuming that all those pieces were going to be in there. If you learn more as the project progresses through the additional studies, that doesn't mean that you can't, the decision cannot continue to be refined and the project cannot continue to be refined.
and I guess my concern, and it's probably a trivial one, is the language is all over the place. Some of it is contingent, which sounds like mandatory. Some of it is, we want a public discussion. I mean, I find it, and perhaps I'm being too legalistic, it's very confusing to me, and again, maybe I should take off my lawyer hat and put my planning commission hat. What do all these words mean when I'm a city council person or I'm an ODOT person and I'm going, well, it's contingent on this, but we're going to study that. We want transparency. I think we undermine, to some extent, clarity on our concerns by throwing in, we're up to 4, I heard 5, a laundry list of thoughts that sort of wander afield from the core concern about this is a major transportation project. Here's critical concerns we want to be sure are watched, or that we want to be sure these concerns are not forgotten as this project moves forward. And I think we undermine our message by being a little scattered in how we word it and a little
So-
scattered in all the concerns we're raising tied to one project. But I have no language to suggest how to clarify it, so I'll just mention my concern, and maybe in the future when we try to do this, we bring a little bit more precision and clarity, because again, I think if we're expecting a decision maker to read this, an Oregon Transportation Commission, they're going to get lost. Instead of having a clear message, we're going to have a lot of words with a lot of well-intentioned policy, and it won't deliver a tangible impact. So I hope in the future we think about that when we try to word policy directives to third parties.
Susan?
I would look at the words contingent and conditioned and say that those are much stronger words than study or consider or those kinds of words. And I don't think you were on the commission yet, but maybe you were. I think you would have bruises and scars from it if you were. But we spent, I think, 2 or 3 hours, maybe 2 or 3 days, on the verbs. of-
Yeah, never
is it-
mind. I wasn't
is it
suggesting it. I'm just
study,
giving
condition-
one
but I-
person's read.
So, no, and so I think it is important that you all, to me, it's not important whether it says contingent or conditioned. Those are along this, in terms of a continuum, they're out here in terms of being somewhat strong words versus consider or take a look at or, study something. So if you feel strongly that we should not make this conditioned or contingent and that we should just be studying it, you should probably let folks know that. But otherwise, I think the verbs are, one direction or
Consistent.
the other. I think that's probably good.
Any other discussion points, concerns, comments? No, so let's go ahead and take a vote on that, Julie.
No,
Yeah.
this is the amendment, the secondary
This is-
amendment, right? TDM and congestion pricing.
Oh, right, so we vote the amendment and then, got it, sorry, thank you. So does everybody understand what we're voting on? We're voting on the amendment, which is Chris's amendment regarding carbon and looking at congestion pricing and other TDM measures to reduce carbon.
And the language is,
To encourage ODOT and PBOT to evaluate congestion pricing for that purpose. Congestion pricing and TDM.
Okay, Julie.
yes.
Yes.
Houk.
Yes.
Larcell. Yes. Hoffman.
Yes.
Rudd.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Feback.
Yes.
St. Martin. Yes. Schultz.
Yes, motion, amendment passes. So now, let's vote on the motion on the table, which is to support the three items up here. I'm not going to even try to read them as action items with the fourth one amendment that we just added.
Yes.
Houk.
Yes.
Larcell. Yes. Hoffman.
Yes.
Rudd.
No.
Smith.
Yes.
Feback.
Yes.
St. Martin. Yes. Schultz.
Yes, the motion passes. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. We have one more item for you tonight.
I think we do know, we put a bunch of words on a piece of paper.
It's going to be problematic.
It's the focus, but oh,
This parking lot.
I've been in language battles. It's down
It'll ultimately mean nothing because it's too.
or maybe they're not. Yeah, some of the stuff nobody ever really. I can't see, where's the arrow?
And while we're getting geared up here, Julie, will you be sure to add to the notes that we discussed putting in the letter, the orphan highway point? Thank you.
Good evening, Rachel Hoy with BPS, and this is the last item we have for this evening. This is a carryover from the last session, and you have in front of you decision table Q. And I wanted to come back to you at the last meeting. We talked a little bit about this item of prohibiting the transfer of FAR from surface parking lots. And the commission asked that staff return with maybe some scenarios or alternatives to what staff had presented. And just to let you know, what staff had presented was to prohibit the transfer of FAR from sites that are entirely surface parking. And so staff has now provided to you an alternative that hopefully we can have a discussion about, but that allows the transfer of FAR from a developed portion of a site, but we tried to focus in on parts of sites that may also just have both surface parking and development and figure out code language that would allow us to leave floor area on the portion of the site that has the surface parking, but allow the development to transfer floor area off. So I provided in the table, you may want to take a look. I have some drawings, quick drawings. I want to walk you through two scenarios. So what we have, scenario one, it's on the back of your table Q. I decided to just use as an example, just a typical 40,000 square foot site. And on this particular site, you have a base FAR of 5:1. So the calculation that we would do would be 5 times 40,000. The site has 200,000 square feet of developable floor area. For this particular site, we would, I'm just using as an example that you have a 2-story building on half the site, and the floor area for that building equals 40,000 square feet. And then the other half of the site is developed with a 20,000 square foot surface parking lot. So if on this particular property, the applicant or the person interested in transferring decides they want to retain their building, the building, remember, is taking up 40,000 square feet. We would, with this code provision that we're proposing, would look at the surface parking area, which is 20,000 square feet, and multiply that by the base FAR, so 5 times 20,000 square feet. The property would need to maintain 1,000 square feet on the site for future development purposes. 100,000, what did I say? Sorry, 100,000 square feet for future development purposes. Okay, yeah. So this, a good question. So the minimum FAR here would be 2:1 with our new proposed minimum FARs. And the way we've proposed the code language is that you have to leave your minimum FAR. So the minimum FAR here would be 2:1, so 2 times the 40,000. So they'd have to leave 80,000 square feet or 100,000 square feet, whichever is greater, is what we're proposing for the code language. So in this case, they'd have to leave the 100,000 square feet. So what that leaves us with for this site is they'd have 60,000 square feet remaining that they could transfer. And that the other image on the other side to the right here is just 140,000 is being used through, or not being used, but 40,000 is being used, and then that's 100,000 that you'd have to leave for future redevelopment of the surface parking lot.
Is there language that clarifies whether you can transfer the potential bonus FAR?
So you can
So if this was a housing
transfer.
project, let's say, and
Right.
whatever, it was all affordable housing.
Mhm.
So if it had qualified for the 3:1 bonus FAR, could it move all the bonus FAR in addition to the base FAR?
If it had qualified for the residential and it
Like,
gained that
That's going to be the only
residential.
one left, right? So I
Right,
guess it
so
would
if,
have to.
yeah, so you can, so if they didn't, if I understand your question, if they didn't use, if it's a project, they didn't use all of their residential FAR that they'd gained, and that was just extra FAR that was on the site, they could transfer that, yes.
So my question is, how come you have to subtract again for the building? Why wouldn't you just say you had to maintain 100,000 on the site, regardless of whether it had a thing on it or not, and then you could transfer away the other 100?
Well, 40 of it, in this particular case, on that 20,000 square feet, there's a building. So we're already using some of the FAR on the site, the development, if I understand you correctly.
So wouldn't it then just be 40 plus 60 for 100 total you'd have to keep at the site?
Don't know that I understand your question. So I think you've already used 40,000 for the building. So just imagine, let me go back to this picture here. Maybe this is, so here's an example. If you look to the right there.
Right.
if I
It's
can
okay.
use-
I understand how you did
is
the
that-
map. I just,
Okay.
it just seemed to me like there was an additional FAR required because there was a building there versus if you just were allowing to transfer only half, they would get half. They would get 100 that they could transfer instead of 60.
I see, yeah, and here what we're trying to do, we tried to take this from, look at this from the surface parking lot part of the property. We were trying to figure out how can we, the intent here was to maintain some FAR on the site for future redevelopment of that surface lot. So we had to kind of look at, okay, if the surface parking lot is covering 20,000 square feet, that's the total area that's in surface parking area times 5, this is what we want to leave on that site. But we want this other side that has some development, they want to keep the building, what's left on top of that? So that's how we came up with that calculation. So there's your 60 that could be transferred off. So the last example that I wanted to share, one of the other comments that the commission had was, how does this impact a historic property? And because we don't want to lose our historic properties, historic preservation is an important policy objective. So one thing that we've done in the code that I just wanted to remind the commission of, part of our proposal, is that let's take the same piece of property, same building, but it's a historic building. They would still have the same amount of FAR to transfer off, 60,000 square feet. But for historic properties, we're proposing that they can transfer an additional 3-to-1 FAR off of the property. So it's not just based on the building itself, it's based on the full site. So for historic sites where you have a historic building, they would have the potential to transfer 60,000 plus an additional 108, what would be a total of 180,000. For the purposes of, in the future, there will be seismic upgrade requirements. So the hope being that that would provide some additional funding to support those seismic upgrades.
Can I make sure I understand how that works? Because I didn't reread that code section.
Mhm.
If you have a historic building that's covering the whole lot, like 1 story, and you've got 2 floors of FAR you can transfer, does that mean that you transfer off to, say 20,000 square feet, let's just say, the other building receives 60,000? Is that, did the other site receive 60,000? Is that what the 3-to-1 means?
They have the ability to transfer off, so they have a building, whatever they have left of FAR from their base. So let's just use this example, and let's say that it's a 2-story building, you said a 20,000 square foot lot. So they use 20,000, I'm sorry, they use 40,000, and they've got another 3-to-1 that they can transfer off. So they have that they can transfer off, plus we're giving them 3-to-1 for the entire site. So another 3 times 20,000, so an additional 60,000. So they've got not only what's left from their base, but they have an additional 3-to-1 because they're a historic property.
So the
that
example
make
she just
sense?
gave, that'd be 120,000. If it was a 20,000 square foot building on a full block, you could use the rest of the block and get it out of there. So if that was if the surface park, so how would surface parking play into a historic structure then? Because right? Does it then limit the additional 3-to-1 on the whole site?
No, I don't. So what would happen, so let me just show you on this first picture. I think that this one might be, so just to imagine that this is the historic building. So you have a 2-story historic building on half the site, and it's 40,000 square feet. The other half is in surface parking at 20,000, but it's still one site. So that historic building, same ownership, it's the same site. they still, we still run through the same calculation on the right there. They would have 100,000 that they would need to leave because of the surface parking. So 60,000 that they'd be able to transfer off. But the provision we've written for historic resources, allowing them to transfer an additional 3 to 1, then would take do the calculation of a 40,000 square foot site times 3. They'd have an additional 120,000 square feet plus the 60,000, giving us the 180,000 to transfer.
Excellent.
Does that make? Right, and that's the calculation on scenario 2. Did that answer your question, Eli, too? I'm sorry. Is that-
I think I understand better how it works, although it seems like given the intent of it, it would make more sense to say that your FAR is worth 3 times as much on someone else's property, because someone would pay 3 times more for your surplus FAR. It's another way of achieving that policy goal. I can't say I can think through the trade-offs, but that seems more,
Sure.
if the idea is to make the FAR, unused FAR on historic properties be worth more, then that would be the way, logically to me, to make it worth more, is to say, if you buy FAR from Joe, who's got the parking lot of the 2-story building, you get 1 square foot for every one that he loses. If you buy it from Ed, who's got the historic property, then you get 3 square feet for every one that Ed loses.
Except the price is set just
By the market.
by the
Yeah,
market, so there's no price.
Yeah, we
You
were.
pay more, right, for, People would-
Maybe, on some days you do, and some days you might not.
Right, that's the challenge, is we're not setting the price of the FAR, it's happening on the open market. So this is a way, not knowing, and the price of FAR has changed, and it does go up and down. So this was one way that staff thought we're at least giving a historic resource more FAR to work with.
Any other questions, conundrums, head scratchers? Too tired for numbers?
I have a thought on it. This doesn't address the concern that I had, but it's a pretty darn creative way of crafting the trade-off between surface parking and existing buildings, and it's done in crayon, so I'm sold.
Yes, you can thank Troy for that.
Fancy crayons. Michelle?
And to clarify, so the scenic sites, the sites protecting scenic corridors are just the same as historic?
No, so the historic resource transfer applies to historic resources. The question related to scenic resources, if you're in a scenic corridor and your height's being restricted, if you happen to also be a historic resource, you'd be able to apply the historic resource transfer, and you'd have an additional 3 to 1. If you're not a historic resource, that's not the way we've written this at this time, that you would be eligible for an additional 3 to 1.
Okay, I misunderstood. I thought when we were going through the process, I'm sure we had talked about if you weren't going to be able to go as high because you were in you could see Mount Hood from there, we were going to do something to mitigate that, but maybe that didn't percolate through.
I think that part of the past discussion has been, if you're in a scenic corridor, you may not have an opportunity because of your height restriction to use all of your FAR, but you do have the opportunity to transfer it within your sub-district. But that's, your point here is not something that we've captured as of yet, if the commission would like to discuss that.
Okay, so in generally, are we in, well, why don't we, I think we've been voting on each and every one of these, haven't we? So is there a motion to accept staff's proposal or some other alternative? Any further discussion? Okay, Julie. Zach Rack?
Zach back, thank you. Yes.
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 Smith? Yes. Spivak?
Yes.
St. Martin?
Yes.
Yes.
I think we need a roulette wheel.
Well, we could just go around counterclockwise, clockwise, as other commissions do.
And then it's the roulette of where she puts the name tags. Sorry,
Well-
did you have a question? So I believe with that, we are complete. So the meeting is over. Thank you.
Thank you.